Mr. Manager?
Oh, thank you, Mayor and members of council. Tonight, we have we have an agenda that we'll be able to get through. As a matter of fact, we've made sure we moved council interests and concerns out to make sure that we get through those tonight. Basically, what I'd like to do with just the agenda overview is we passed out a piece of paper that gives you a 3-month snapshot of the calendar. And I just want to take a couple minutes to go over to that before I go over the rest of the agenda. Basically what we have here is, and I committed to you that we would do this, we would give you 90 days out periodically so that we can make sure that it helps you with planning. Also in terms of what you asked, to make sure that we have some of the boards and committees meeting with us. So I'll just say in terms of the legend at the bottom, when you see yellow, it's basically already a predetermined meeting. When we have what would be, I guess, salmon would be that work session. It would typically be the first Tuesday of the month, but because of holidays, we've needed to have the green bar, which is extra work sessions, so that we could get back to that 36, the magical 36. In other words, we took this process and we overlaid it with an existing calendar. So right now, we are well within the 36 required meetings that we have to have this year, but we do want to give you a snapshot of the next 3 months. Basically, after tonight, we have a series of topics that I'll go through in terms of the agenda, but next week is our first work session that we have with the board. A board and commission is actually the planning commission. And then after recess on the 16th of August, there's a meeting with NRHA. And on the 30th of August, there's a meeting with Norfolk Public Schools. So sometime in the next 6 weeks, we're going to have 3 separate meetings with boards and commissions. And as you're aware, there have been some conversations about we're not doing that frequently enough. I would like to say that a couple of topics that we'll try to tackle over the course of the next couple of months is that during the August 16th meeting, we talked, I believe the last time we met, about a presentation on the Park Place YMCA that would be covered in that August 16th meeting. We also want to talk, excuse me, a little bit about just tax relief in general, and even our tax abatement program in that work session. And again, we'll have the NRHA meeting. What we need to make sure that we stay consistent with all of the work that we have to get done, we also would like to have a formal meeting that night. So in other words, you'll come off of your recess, and we will not have had a meeting since the 19th, so it's very important in order to keep work moving through the process to have a formal meeting that night. On the 23rd.
What time do you want us to meet, Marcus?
7.
No, I understand that, but I mean the work session. What time?
Sure. Typically what we do is we start at 2.
Right.
So we could have a work session, and right now what is happening is that you'll miss 2 committee meetings in August. So we could literally have what would have been the 2 committee meetings today, Finance and Administration, as well as Infrastructure on the 16th. So what we want to do is keep that 2 o'clock to 7 o'clock open to give you flexibility. So in other words, if your schedule, right? In other words, if the 2 doesn't work, we can start at 4.
Right.
But the key is that we need to have the discussion about the YMCA, and we also need to have the meeting with NRHA. So right now we have that window.
Okay.
And then on the 23rd, there are a couple of issues that have been around for a while that we wanted to address. Basically, in the committee meetings, in the communities and public safety meeting, we'd like to discuss red light cameras, as well as the fire station study. And I will say, that's a study that's been around since 2007. There's been discussions about it, no formal presentation. What we'll do is give you the findings of that study, as well as the recommendations that we have related to fire stations. In the Health, Education, and Families Committee meeting, we'd like to talk about runs and walks. We'll talk a little bit about that tonight, as well as birds, bunnies, and bees. So we'll get that covered in the August meeting. And
we're
then
moving on from just bees. We're doing all the we're taking bees and doing
chickens. Birds. We're covering chickens.
We're covering it all.
The bunnies need to be in.
It's got to be. You're gonna do it, you're gonna do it.
And then lastly, when you come back after the holidays, Labor Day holiday, I know I shouldn't have done that one. We do want to present to you the general plan in the informal session. So it's a lot of work over the next 3 months, but those are some of the issues that have been outstanding for a while. And what we'd like to do is get those to the cognizant committee, or at least to the informal session. So that is a snapshot of some of the topics over the next 3 months.
What time we meet next week? That's as far ahead as I can.
Next week, 2 o'clock. And there will be no formal session next week. So it's just a good old-fashioned work session on the
We can
19th.
just keep on keeping on.
That's exactly right. So that's the snapshot, and we wanted to put that in front of you tonight, because again, we have next week, and then there's the council recess. Okay. So unless there's some questions about the next 3 months, what we have for the agenda tonight is that we have Karen Scherberger and Rob Cross.
Can I just ask one thing?
Yes.
At what point are we gonna start putting an agenda together for, or you taking suggestions on a retreat?
We could talk a bit about that next week. We can put something out in your Friday mail. There are a couple of topics that have already been
Right.
swirling around, but we can get that out to you.
And will the council retreat be the Monday and the Tuesday?
Well, what we've done, and again, it's will of the council, what we've done as administration is we made sure that we kept our calendars clear on that Sunday night, Monday, Tuesday. So whatever works best for you as a group, we've made ourselves available.
Is that the assumption? That you would do Monday and Tuesday like
Are we
always?
staying in town?
We haven't talked about it. I mean, last year we did because, for just consideration about the budget. You know, it's just not the same, in my opinion, when we stay in town. I mean, you just don't, you work around the retreat schedule. We don't spend enough time informally just talking.
But the bean counters.
But, you know, I don't, you know, it's whatever the council wants to do. I mean, we've gone as far as Smithfield, which is not very far, spent one night. It does give you some downtime. We always have the press there. And, but if you want to just stay, I mean, the Attic Theater was a good venue. We could do that. We could just spend, you know, just stay here.
You have to go out of town.
You know, the idea of a retreat, I mean, if we're gonna call it a retreat, you know, otherwise it's really a work session if you're in town. And I'm not saying that it has to be out of town, but are there options other than, you know, Smithfield, perhaps it's maybe a little pricier? I mean, I know you guys are gonna laugh at this, but what about something like Camp Silver Beach or
Hot
something?
Springs.
Hmm?
Hot Springs. Greenbrier.
Yeah, the Greenbrier. You know, seriously, I mean, aren't there some places that are a little, would be less expensive?
I've
Wakefield,
been to
just
the
an
airfield,
outdoor?
Wakefield.
Well, that's what I was gonna bring up.
Like,
Just an
as
outdoor?
intense as.
No, Camp Silver Beach is inside,
Surely you're not.
but, you know, we can work with the wild.
Go to Ocean View. We can, sleep on
That's a little rustic.
Monday.
I don't know how to,
Camp Silver Beach.
no, Ocean Beach.
Running water,
No, I know.
central heat, central air.
Northern Neck.
I don't.
Well, you want to think about it, and we'll maybe
throw 'em
next
in a
week
hat before
try to
now.
make our minds up, but Smithfield actually has been, I think the surveys in the past, that's as cheap as anything we've.
We go to Outer Banks. 45 minutes away.
I mean, there are a few places, only a couple places down there you can go. But Smithfield just far enough, not too far, and the price was right. But I don't care, I mean,
We've been to Fort McGruder,
yeah. And we went to the place,
Saluda,
Yeah.
Saluda, Virginia, St. Andrews headquarters.
Yeah.
World headquarters.
Camp Chanko.
That's camping out.
No, I think there's some indoor places. Okay.
I'm not kidding.
Actually, you're the one
I
of the
am
youngest
not.
ones here. Come on, have a little sense of adventure.
Well, I just had
My
an
sense
image
of
of
adventure goes
Barclay
as
and
far
Paul singing in
as-
the same tent with each other, so
My sense of adventure goes as far as
does
room
it get along
service.
so much?
Okay.
Black and white.
We actually withdraw
Okay.
for roommates.
Okay, well, we'll, maybe next week, you guys think it over, and we'll come to a decision whether we're gonna stay here or go away, so. Okay.
With that said, then, again, we have Karen and Rob who are ready to present tonight with a recommendation that's related to the 10th anniversary of the 9/11 event.
The stars are coming on, that's what the lights.
And one of the
Did the
things,
camera go on, is that what it was? Oh, we didn't have a camera.
Get our
No, you
makeup
did.
readjusted.
You did.
Marcus, I'm sorry, before we go on, I did want to ask, are we going to put on the agenda board appointments?
Yeah,
on
that's,
here?
I was
Is
gonna
that-
mention that to him too.
Okay. I didn't-
I'd like to do some of them next week.
okay,
Okay.
okay. Take it away, Karen.
Or at least decide by next week.
Oh, correct.
Okay, thank you. Rob and I are going to work together on this presentation, but let me begin by just starting off with the fact that these events that are taking place all around the country, the national title, if you will, or the umbrella that's being used to gather all these groups under a heading is the 10th Anniversary Healing and Remembrance. We can call it what we want, but that's what nationally the term is. Okay. All right, you are supposed to move forward, right?
Help.
You can just move to the next slide. Okay. We started this process by checking around the country to see what other communities were doing. And some of the events that are being organized run the gamut from runs to motorcycle rides to concerts to dedications of monuments, creating fields of 3,000 flags, and firefighter stair climbs, and a whole host of other projects, but they all seem to fall basically into the same categories. If we could take the next slide. So our objectives in planning this event, working with city administration, are very simple. Our objectives are three. One is to honor the day with dignity and respect. The second is to create a community-based event that's open to the public. And the third is to create an event that involves first responders, military, which includes active, retired, veterans, and community representatives. The next, and we've identified the following groups of participants, and this creates a framework so that is inclusive of the entire community, which includes our military and maritime entities, the Navy, Coast Guard, Maritime Sea Services, as well as public vehicles, boats, which I'm sure the recreational vessels will want to get involved. The Norfolk Police, Fire, and Rescue vehicles that represent first responders, and there are others in that category. An honor guard from Norfolk Police, as well as a Joint Military Honor Guard. Community representatives, we're looking at 100 that will parade in 100 American flags, as well as those personnel from the Norfolk Police, Fire, Rescue, Sheriffs, and other first responder groups, veterans organizations, local school, community, church choirs, and invited speakers. How this fits into the site, and we are working with Town Point Park. This was the site, if you remember, the day after 9/11, there was a quick ceremony, very impressive, that was organized on the waterfront, and then a year later. So Town Point Park has become that place to mark these occasions. But those of you, I know you all are familiar with the waterfront, but the idea here would be to line the water's edge with the different ships and the vessels representing the maritime community here. And then the next layer in along the promenade would be a row of first responder vehicles, fire trucks, police, rescue. The idea would be that we'd get as many of the hook and ladder trucks to raise their ladders and hang American flags. And I can tell you that every pole, every lamp post in the park would fly an American flag. And then you move into the circle there in the middle of the park, and that would be where the ceremony itself would take place. And all of these participants that I've just mentioned, the ones that would be not in the water and in their vehicle, would parade or process down the middle of the park, which we call it the concourse, procession of honor. They would come down into that center part of the park. The 100 community leaders, students, would have you carry the American flags, would place them in a semicircle to create the backdrop, and then the choirs and all the other units that would be marching into the park or processioning into the park would take their place, and then the actual speeches would take place from the center facing out into the areas that are marked for the public gatherings. So I'll turn this over to Rob, who can talk you through the program itself.
Thank you. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, council, and the mayor, and city manager. As Karen mentioned, our goal that day is to make the event very inclusive and representative of the entire community. So the calendar that we're suggesting at this point would be that the park would open at 8 a.m. And at that point, as people arrive, we would be distributing either 3,000 flowers or flags for those people that are coming to the ceremony. And at 8:30, the ceremony would start, as Karen mentioned, with the procession in. We'd be using the Tidewater pipes and drums to bring the procession in. And we would mark each of the 4 times when the planes crashed with a moment of silence, and then using the local choirs with appropriate repertoire or music that would work for this event. And then that would take us from the 8:46 period to the 10:15 period, where we would wrap up the official ceremony part of the event with the national anthem. And then the park, I'm sorry, can you go to the next slide?
There should be one more before that.
Well, I'll go ahead and proceed. We will be inviting all the local choirs within the community to be part of this event, so we would be the mass choirs. And the choirs that are on our list, and we'd obviously like suggestions if we've missed someone, would be the I. Sherman Green Chorale, the local church choirs, Norfolk Public School choirs, Norfolk State University Choir, Old Dominion University Choir, Governor's School of the Arts, Virginia Children's Choir, Virginia Chorale, the Virginia Opera Chorus, the Virginia Symphony Chorus, Virginia Wesleyan Choir. We also are, by good coincidence of the calendar of that period, the cast for the Virginia Opera Vaida will be in town, so we'd be asking some of the soloists from that to participate, and also the cast from Rappahannock County that we did last spring for the Opera and the Arts Festival will be in town because they're re-rehearsing for the tour of Rappahannock County that takes place in September and October. So at the end of that 10:15 period, the park would remain open for the rest of the day, and people could reflect on the park and plant their flags or flowers. And we will suggest that we're inviting local residents during that period for the rest of the day to be reading the 3,000 names of the people who lost their lives during that day. So we would be having that reflective period. And then we would wrap up the day. The symphony is planning a concert that evening. We would start the concert with taps at 7:12, which is sundown, and the end of the concert would conclude the day's events for the honoring of 9/11. And Karen, do you want to kind of wrap up next steps for us?
So if you can visualize, if we can go back to that map for a second, if you can visualize how all of these entities, and when we did this for the 1-year anniversary, there were hundreds, several hundreds of community participants, from the choirs to the school students to those in uniform. And for those of you that were out there, it was truly impressive. And you add to that the element of the vehicles and the ships. We would leave, at the end of the ceremony, we would leave those 100 flags so that people can place the flowers in front of the flags. They can come throughout the course of the day for their own private reflection. And the thought would be that we would ask the Norfolk Police Honor Guard to stay in place throughout the period of time during the visual, and it might be that there are others that would want to do the same thing. The thought would be when the ships leave and the other vehicles leave, we could leave one of the Norfolk fire trucks behind that stage with the ladder raised with the flag hanging. So it would create a very nice visual and a very nice sense of place throughout the course of the day for those people who do want to come and have private reflection. So the next slide, these are our next steps. One is to extend the official invitation to the Navy and Coast Guard and the other services for the ships and honor guards, which that process has started. We'll be meeting with the Norfolk Fire, Police, all the first responders to talk about their involvement and the honor guards. We'll be inviting the Veterans Associations. We've already started that process to participate with their units. We'll be continue to work with the administration to issue information to the local schools, the civic leagues, and the community announcements for choir participation. We'll work to select those 100 people who will carry those flags in the procession, put them in the flag stands. We'll work with administration, with Marcus and others to determine the appropriate speakers. There's approximately 79 minutes from the time we start till we end, in between the moments of silence for choirs and people to make official comments. How we select the individuals to read the 3,000 names, we're working on that. We've already started talking with Hank Lynch about Nauticus as a rain site, and certainly we want to work with Bob and others and the members of the consortium and everybody else to get the message out. And so that's our program. We think it's a very doable program, and it provides a framework for everyone in the community to be a part of it in some meaningful way. So, be happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Paul Jim.
Yeah, we had one Norfolk native who was killed in 9/11. Anthony White was his name. And I'm wondering, do we need to highlight that? You know, Nelson White?
Sure.
Yeah, his brother.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Anthony White.
His sister was Teacher of the Year.
We'll make sure.
Okay.
Karen, I think the program's terrific. There are other cities in Hampton Roads as well that are doing programs. I think Chesapeake is doing a 2-day Freedom Festival or something, but there are other Hampton Roads cities and cities all across the country and across the Commonwealth. But I mean, I think this is absolutely terrific, and I know you put it together in fairly short order, and we just asked you to do it not just a few weeks ago, a couple of weeks ago, I guess. So, Mr. Manager, unless there's some reason not to just proceed forward, I mean, I think we ought to do it. I think that the city will be proud of this effort.
I agree.
Okay.
Thanks, Mayor. Thanks,
All right,
Brian.
thank you very much. Okay, thanks.
Now we have time.
Okay. Andy, we now have council concerns. The manager has rolled over. Let me say that. And has moved council concerns up towards the beginning of the program.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Mr. Reddy?
Yeah. Some time ago, I asked our real estate assessor to give me some information on how much the value of the land from all of the land we own on the waterfront,
Right.
over to the border of Town Point Park. And it's somewhere in the neighborhood of maybe $34 to $37 million. And which a portion of that includes Harbor Park, so we have a lease situation with that.
Right.
But I have been still of the opinion that we should put that land on the market and sell it. And real estate taxes that we would bring in, per year, would be a pretty good hit. If we could get $50 million for it, we could save 20 and spend 30. And that might be sort of, I mean, that might sound kind of grand, but I think if we really look at that and let's get out of the waterside business and put people who know how to do that, But if we could sell that property and 50 million could be a pretty good piece because, as I say, it's valued at about 34 million, so it might be a little high. But at any rate, if we sold that, we could put a piece of that money away and then spend some of it. I know you want to spend every nickel.
Yeah.
That's it. That's all I had.
I got straight with Stanley on all mine. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Dr. Wood?
Two quick things. Just at some point, we'd like another update on where we are on the Paboo Park. And secondly, I may be confused on this, but do you remember, Tommy, the issue about the piers and the encroachment and how we had had a study done and we were gonna go back and bring that up in front of council regarding,
Talk about the sand dunes.
right, and to meet the
yeah, right,
guidelines. And I
right.
thought we were gonna come back
Right.
within a month, and aren't we in that month or not?
Walkways, the
Walkways?
Yeah.
Yes, we're working with the city attorney.
Okay,
That should be
There's only
scheduled
two
soon.
things, there's walkways and then there's obnoxious structures or
Right.
inappropriate.
We were
Right.
given the
but it was
packet,
also
but-
the consistency with the document that had been put together by the task force and how that had not really been followed up on.
And also whether or not we need to adopt an ordinance accepting it or
Right.
some policy, that was
Yes.
what we needed.
We
So
had
if-
prepared it to come to you as an ordinance, a resolution actually, for you to formally adopt those as guidelines. And it's a good thing to do. It's something that we've not done regularly in the past for guidelines for the administration. And so that we've reviewed it to make sure that it's appropriate for your adoption and that it tweaked it a little bit. And then Mr. Mayor had an application that triggered this, and so that's being
Not the
kept
mayor.
until.
Not the mayor. Mr.
Right,
Mayor.
John Mayer. So yes, it is coming back to you, and it should be ready for August.
Okay, and we'll have some time for discussion because I think it's a
Does
little
our
complicated.
agenda item impact that, just the walk?
Just the walkway
Today's,
today.
okay. Okay, that's
Right, about structures.
Yeah.
Right.
right. But we had said that it would come back and I thought it was to come back this morning, okay.
And
Thank
it might only be fair that Mr. Mayor's ordinance is allowed to come back up, the request. We might have to discuss whether or not that should come up before this, since it would only be fair that he's followed the procedures, but nothing was ever given. I don't know, we can talk about that. I don't know if we would go here.
A couple things.
No, that would
First
be at
thing,
your discretion if you wanted to bring that back.
First thing, Princess Anne Road, across from the one-stop convenience store, that continues to be a problem. One gentleman come down to council and talked about the drug of choice that is creating an issue in our streets, and that's heroin, especially amongst our young people. He's correct when he said that. But the rash of burglaries that has taken place this summer by young people is at an all-time high, and that particular area there, we continue to be hit by persons who are trying to feed their habit. The other issue that they have there, you got these 18-wheelers that are parking on the feeder lane there beside Park Terrace Apartments, residents there. Civic meeting had asked me to address that, as well as the vacant houses that are on Maypole. Again, they're using those boarded properties to go in and feed their habits. So that's an ongoing issue. Merrimack Avenue continues to be an issue. The houses there, a couple of boarded up houses that are there, continue to be a haven for drug activity. So we really need to, again, it don't take a rocket scientist to see what's going on out there, so I don't know in terms of, I know sometimes investigations take some time, but it shouldn't take this long. I mean, the community shouldn't be held hostage, and everybody knows what's going on, and they're willing to even talk and share information, but we're not getting it resolved as it relates to that issue. So the other issue was in Northview, we had a murder just over the weekend. We got, I didn't know if it was domestic in nature or what the situation was. Understood that they had a person in custody. But we get that information, and I would like to know, again, at the end of the day, if it was random or if it was domestic, whatever the situation was, it does help. because I do, people call and want to know what the situation is in that particular area. One of the things that I guess for me is being orientation, but I would like to know, as it relates to downtown, we have this business improvement district. We also have folk that are wanting to come and invest, if you will, in and around our downtown. People pay a added premium to live in our downtown. I would tend to believe that it's not just for proximity of restaurants and the cultural attractions that we have. I think that they're also buying into the future of downtown in terms of the promise of it and the amenities that will come to help foster the other attractions that we do have. And so for me, I guess I would like to know how we're utilizing these dollars, and are we setting aside funds to be able to attract and retain good businesses downtown? Because again, if the businesses are not vibrant down there, then we can't be sustaining, and then people want to move. But I don't know if you got that email from Siegfried, as relates to coming down there after 10 o'clock at night. I mean, I thought we had turned that corner, but obviously we haven't. But still got a lot of work to do. Now, I just think the city has to get a little more involved in terms of having a strategic plan. And the other part of that equation is that I don't remember the last time I sat in a meeting. I know we defined, the corridors, the height of buildings or what have you, but I still haven't seen that picture where we define the types of businesses that we want to see, whether it be on Granby Street or whether it be in Waterside or whether it be by the ballpark, Harbor Park, or what have you. I mean, I've seen the pictures of out-year plans, but I've never seen it defined in terms of what it's going to be, and the destination itself. And I think the sooner we understand that, the better off we will be collectively downtown. But I would like to, if we don't do that now, I would like to understand better the utilization of those dollars. Because I think that sometimes we get to duplicating services. I mean, why would I pay for, I mean, the city is supposed to clean my streets anyway. So why do I have to pay double for that? We could be utilizing those dollars for other things. I just think that we need to connect the dots in terms of the resources we have and the opportunities that we have in and around downtown. I think that we should be taking those dollars and, if these businesses are paying taxes, paying a premium, I think that what they should get in return is that when we have events, whether it's at Town Park, whether it's at the Scope, we have these jumbotrons. I said this before. These businesses should be highlighted if things are going on, because we're trying to move businesses from out of an arena or out of a park to downtown to filter into everything else that's going on. And if we're not doing that, then we're not being successful. That's just my 2 cents.
Maybe it's a good idea, because I think Anthony brings up a good point, that there is some misconceptions about what they now call it the DID, Downtown Improvement District, as opposed to the BID. I mean, it came into being many years ago. We haven't revisited it in a long time. And just how it operates, it has its own board. It's not supposed to duplicate services, even though sometimes it looks like it does. But it'd be good to get a refresher on all that sort of stuff. How much money is generated by it. The city actually gets a penny of it, which I think it creates a little over $200,000 a year. It looks like 12 or something in last year's budget. So, but I mean, I think some of us saw stirs. I guess everybody, he's not everybody, I guess.
I think it'd be an appropriate topic for the
Yeah.
retreat. I really
You know,
do.
Anthony, I talked to some, some folks who were actually on Granby Street Friday night, for instance, after 10 o'clock. And they felt perfectly comfortable. I know it's, we have different audiences on Granby Street right now, and at different times, and, I think, that, and I think that's good, actually. And I know what Stir is referencing, but, the people I've talked to, the young kids, folks I've talked to who are down there, don't feel, it's not the way it used to be, at least. I'm asleep by 10 o'clock, what do I know, right? But I just talk to people who come down here, maybe we ought to come down and see it, but I really think it's better than Stir than maybe we know, or maybe it's worse, I don't know. But
Well, I mean, last year, me and my wife had finished dinner, we were down there, so it was, you and I walked it some years ago.
Right.
And,
back.
yeah.
Okay. All right, thank you. And
Daryl was taking care of most of my issues. The only thing I have is an agreement with Teresa on Cahoon Park. I'd just like to know when it's gonna be moved.
Could I ask a question? What's the issue with this Caboon Park? I mean, I've read in the paper and everything, but
Neighborhood,
You got
the
the
civic leagues, the neighborhood, the civic leagues feel it's an unsafe location. They want it moved. The owner was not aware through some difficulties with communication in the fact that it was going to be moved, and so that he was protesting it. I understand now the Kaboom had some issues about it, and I think Marcus is trying to work all that out. But I remain committed to the fact that I think it needs to be moved, and I support the neighborhood.
but there was a lady that lived, right there, saying that they wanted. I mean, why would you? I mean, so I guess.
She wants it moved.
No, one lady was saying that they wanted it there.
Well, I hadn't heard that comment. The neighborhood that I've heard from has been unanimous in support. And I think you saw the incident of shootings at the park last weekend or the weekend before with children. So I really think we have some better options for the park. But I know there's some issues with the owner and with the Kaboom organization. So I just wanted to see where we're going.
okay, Angela, is that?
That's it, yep.
I had a wonderful opportunity to go on a tour with Public Works on last Friday from 7 till 1 o'clock. And John and Alice and Kristen did a great job. It seemed like
That's
a very...
why John went on vacation.
Yeah.
We haven't seen him since then.
No, I didn't do the helicopter ride. My wife wouldn't let me. But no, they have a new video now that they to save money, so they can. Yeah, right. But it was really opened up a lot for me of how much work our employees do and how much we do for our citizens. And I was even saying, the video that they showed of our water system, that they should be showing that on Channel 48, because even if it's at 1 o'clock in the morning when people are channel surfing, it's just so neat. I don't think people really understand what our in our history of what our first councils did, to make sure that we were protected. And anyway, I was also very impressed with our employees, how respectful they were. Just everybody was just wonderful. And the interesting part was, though, when I walked into our trash facilities and saw how many trucks on the board were down, and it was interesting to see that. We have a lot of work to do there. But I appreciated it, and I particularly like Chris over at Moore's Bridge, who's very passionate about what he does there. And he, as a former science teacher, I think he was excited that I was there as well, because I understood some of what you're saying. But thank you for arranging that. And John, I don't think he's here, or Alice and Kristen, they did an awesome job with it. The other thing, I was going to ask you, Have you finalized responsibilities of the ACMs and what their roles are, or is it
did
still
that.
moving?
We did that Monday, yes.
Okay, I was just wondering if we could get a list of what they do. It helps when we're talking to citizens and telling them, who they should contact next time. The last thing was about redistricting, and I hate bringing this up, but I know we're going to discuss it at the retreat, but I'm wondering if it would be prudent if we formed a committee before the retreat that could come in during that session and talk to us about their expectations instead of waiting till the retreat to talk about it. Whatever we're going to do with redistricting down the road.
What type of committee?
I don't know if there was going to be a committee. I think that was mentioned when we were discussing it. If in August that committee could meet or whatever they were going to do to start working on it, if it was going to be Rudy or, that we could get a presentation ahead of time, not wait till the retreat to discuss it or go over what we already know.
Don't we have to kind of?
Yeah, don't we have to come to tackle what it is we want to study?
As a council, I think we need to kind of agree which way we're headed. I don't think.
No, I really felt like, because if there was a rush to do the redistricting, it was for this upcoming election, which is just the super wards.
Sure.
Which I think in almost anybody's plan probably are not gonna change that much. So there isn't the rush that we, at one time talked about, because the major issue would be the redistricting for whatever wards system we set up.
Right.
So I feel like we ought to sit down at the retreat and talk about what exactly we want this committee to be looking at, be a little more specific. I think we've got some more time to do that.
Okay.
And then if we decide on a committee, then we can do that. But I actually feel, Tommy, that I'd rather spend a little more time talking about it and
Maybe
Yeah.
I just misunderstood. It wasn't,
Yeah.
I was
But
just thinking
I
that
am,
we could get the groundwork done before it came
Right.
to us.
but
and-
I think there may be more groundwork than some of us, maybe envisioned. And so that's what I think we need to hash out.
I guess my concern was if we were gonna sit around the table too and just start throwing out stuff, are we really gonna have the dialogue that we need to be having? Or could some pre-work be done to, make sure that we have all the information that we need to know? I think some of us admitted that we were still naive in learning some of how redistricting came about. I just wanna make sure it's just not a random, 20-minute discussion and then we move on.
I think it's really much more in depth than just the simple redistricting though.
Yeah.
And I think that if you are going to select a committee, you're putting the cart before the horse somewhat in the sense that we haven't established the parameters that we're looking for to then just call a committee to come in and talk to some redistricting. I really think it may be, what I've been looking at is even more of an issue is who's to say that even the system that we have in place is really the correct system.
Right.
It really requires more of a discussion on this level, and then to go to that level of perhaps bringing in others to the discussion. I think it really requires a frank discussion on our own part, and I think that we have historical figures, and I use that in a serious sense, who have lived through past redistrictings and have lived through the racial issues that set up this particular process, that those of us haven't. And I'm curious as to know do we want a system of government that remains in wards, or do we want a system that goes to let's say how the beach has it, where you run at large and you have a borough that you live in, vis-a-vis a ward that only votes for you. So I think that it's really a bigger picture of government at our level than just saying redistrict. And I mean, that's,
Right.
and I think redistricting is a part of it, because once we look at government at our level, and it will require the city attorney to brief us frankly on the various forms that are available. It seems every city has a different form. So I think that's really what I would ask for before we just go right into redistricting our current system, because I don't know if our
Brenda,
current
that's not
system-
what I'm asking.
Yeah.
I was asking for like a committee that would do the research to bring to us, as opposed to
Yeah.
Bernard's office or, kind
I
of taken
understand.
away from us.
And I think it's something,
I
we can get to that at some point. I think we ourselves.
I think we can get there. I think they can provide us with enough information. the committee that you're, if you're referencing the committee that worked on the, made the recommendations on the elected mayor that I've talked about a couple times, we gave that group a specific charge.
Okay.
The city council first sat down before we formed the committee. We said, here's the task, here's the charge. And then we got Congressman Whitehurst to, and that's what, you have to tell them what it is you want before they can go off and study something. So
I was just bringing up one of my constituents who spoke, Maureen, had emailed me right afterwards, and I told her I would ask at
Well,
this
I
meeting,
do
so
think- I
she's
think we all
ready
need
to
to-
get started and help out with it if we could,
and I think we do need to have a lot of frank discussions about this, and whether the newspaper has created a sense of urgency that we don't feel out of the community to get to move something quickly. So I think we ought to take our time and do it right.
One of the things that we didn't do that we should have done, in my opinion, we didn't bring in professionals. We didn't bring in 2000, I think we brought in demographers from ODU and Norfolk State. We didn't do that this year. And I think we need to bring those individuals in, and we need to find out the climate of the Justice Department, and we need to find out what the legal position is in the Justice Department that we have now. And so I think it's a lot broader than bringing in, it's a little different than going to direct election of mayor. That was a local issue, but this has a broader impact. And I think that if we're going to do it, we need to do it right. We need to find out the climate of the Justice Department. We need to bring professional demographers in to show us different scenarios, even if there are other ones different than that we've already seen. But I just don't believe that we can go out and get 10 or 12 people in the community without Justice Department purview and bring us back what we really need. This is very, very serious. We're talking about, as I said earlier, we're talking about for 10 years, having a 5-3 white majority.
I want to keep,
Yeah, so let's get that around.
the system is a 4-3 board system with a popularly elected mayor on top of it. And so it is not a 5-3 system. It's a 4-3 system with a popularly elected mayor that everybody gets to vote on.
Yeah, if you got
It's a-
over
it's a 1-2.
$200,000,
Okay.
if you got over $200,000, then it becomes, look at it, it becomes,
I hear you. I know
a
you
little
said
more
that to me
even.
before.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I didn't bring this up to cause more debate. I want to make sure that it stays on the table because we promised that to the people who were there.
Oh, yeah, I don't
who
think
did.
anybody has any question.
And maybe, Marcus, it means, or Bernard, that the Department of Justice has 2 staff members assigned to Virginia, and maybe one of them can be invited to come down when we do our retreat to talk to us about where they are.
I don't think the Justice Department will come down here on a voluntary basis. and talk to us.
So then what I would like to ask is that Bernard give us a one-page summary on what this voting act means to us, what the future of that would be, and just like Paul said, what our latitude is. Something that's very concise that would help us in our discussion at the retreat. That would be helpful to me anyway.
Sure. But I just want to know what the discussion is. I mean, to really be honest with you, because you got folks, just like we had 2 plans to come in and say, the plans were basically I wanted to create another African-American ward. Somebody could come in where you said there's 7-8% there's a Latino community. Could raise the same argument that they're raising in Virginia Beach. That I want you to carve out a area that would allow a person that's non-white and non-African American to have an opportunity to serve on Norfolk City Council. And so what I'm saying to you is that, do we really know what it is we're looking for? And I still think that sometimes we chase the ghosts of yesterday. I don't think the climate is such today that warrants the type of drastic change or the anger that some people had yesterday. When I look at people like Andy or Tommy, and young people that are taking their place, we're not going to be here forever.
You're young too.
I mean, but I've been here around here.
I think that's what we'll talk about
Right,
at the
but
retreat.
yeah, I
whether or not
understand
it's
that.
important.
But I just again, when we begin to, when this process came about, the only plan that I thought that Mr. Riddick brought a plan in that had merit. It was something that that was vetted some time ago, and it came back to the table. But the reality of it is, there's other plans we never really had a real chance to really look at. I mean, the paper spoke to it and said it created another African American ward. Then they said it was a ward of influence. Me and Mr. Riddick was in the same ward in that plant. So was Andy and you. But it didn't speak to that. So I would just hope that, as we talk about this and we release this information, that it comes out right in the court of public opinion, because at the end of the day, the decisions that we make at this table in terms of trying to get it right for generations to come, not about us, but trying to get it right for generations to come and make sure that we have parity and balance that will go forward 20, 30, 40 years after we're all gone, that we create a system of checks and balances that will lead this city to on a successful path. So at the end of the day.
Under the ruling that we are under, there was a protected class.
Okay.
An African American community is a protected class. That class has not been expanded to Hispanics or Asians or anything.
Okay.
And so I guess we're still under, the African American is still a protected class in that.
But that's what I was wondering, if another class of people that consider themselves minority.
Yes, they had to go to Supreme Court,
Right.
like Irvin and James case.
Okay.
See what not even Greeks are protected. But Senator Webb made a really strong statement, Paul, that the Voting Rights Act was predicated on the 13th Amendment and not on the 14th. And so that's, it was Jim Webb, Senator Webb. Yeah, that it was, what'd you say?
One term Webb. He didn't even stay long enough to get in a fight. One term Webb.
I shouldn't have used that then, I'm sorry. Okay. So I think we've got to talk about it at the retreat and find out which way we're going. Okay. All right, that's why you didn't want to do this.
Well, I was just gonna say, there goes our agenda again.
Okay. Healthy City Initiative.
The Mayor and Council, the Healthy City Initiative, it's been on the informal agenda a couple times. I just want to say that in terms of the last work session we had, there was a discussion about what would be the priorities of the city. This may come across as something that's light, but we believe what we heard from you is that the health of the city is something that's extremely important also. So whether it's a conversation about how we work with the schools, how we work with communities, how we make sure that this is a walkable community, a bikeable community, things of that nature. We believe that this presentation is right. This is the right time to make sure that everybody understands it's a priority of the administration of the city. So with that said, Ann is going to go through what we believe are some good things that are happening now and some things that we'd like to implement.
Good afternoon. We have a new Healthy City initiative. It's going to be building on some of the things that we already have going and also adding some new things. I'm going to see if this works. Oh, it does. Our vision supports healthy behaviors, both of the city employees and also making a healthy community for all the residents in the city. Our guiding principles are to first develop a long-term strategy to promote health for everyone for a very long time and having a lasting impact on them individually and Norfolk as a community. And then that would be grounded in an actual plan that we would be doing to promote wellness throughout the community. We looked to other cities to see what they were doing. The National League of Cities has an Institute for Youth Education and Families that has sponsored healthy initiatives across the nation. They actually work with cities and give them funding to promote their Healthy City initiative. Some examples of those cities, when you look through them, those cities on the net, shows that each city has addressed healthy cities in a different manner, a manner in which is specific to their city. However, overall, in order to have a successful program, there are several things that is a thread through most of the cities, and that is high-level leadership, a shared citywide vision for community wellness,
broad-based partnerships with a diverse group of stakeholders, using data based on the specific community, and that data then sets forth goals to measure progress, a strategy based on the local assets and resources, and then tapping into resources that are available either in the community or outside the community. I'm just going to look at two different cities with you today. One is Charleston, South Carolina. They did some very basic things, some things that we're on our way to doing as well. They invested in a physically active city by building trails and bike paths. They redeveloped a public space into a vibrant farmers market. They created a city-school partnership and developed agreements to share facilities between the schools and the city.
No, they didn't, did they?
Huh? We're trying to get there. and they incorporated their health and wellness goals into a youth plan. As you know, we're going to be working on a youth plan as well and can do that in our youth plan. In La Mesa, California, they looked at barriers to walkability. We've been doing that too, particularly around our light rail stations. They created collaboration between the school and the community aimed directly at wellness efforts. They made some policy changes to promote walkable environments, and they developed a Live Well strategic plan. That was a Live Well strategic plan focused on different segments of the community. So they focused on the schools, they focused on faith-based, they focused on civic leagues, neighborhoods in the Live Well strategic plan. Other ideas from the National League of Cities: converting schoolyards to engaging spaces for physical activity, attracting youth to use the schools. Environmental efforts, using wetlands when they're a little bit drier, having kids be able to walk and adults walk through wetlands. Making it easier and safer to be active, having safe routes for kids to walk to schools. And improving access to play spaces and farmer markets for children in low-income areas. We have a lot of things going on in Norfolk already, and this is kind of, it's a nice way to begin a program with a few things already in action. The health department this fall is going to be starting a body mass index program. They're doing it jointly with Portsmouth. They've been working on their study design. They're going to be doing a longevity study of body mass index in our schools and in Portsmouth schools. Recreation Parks and Open Space has just established its Let's Move program at the Fitness and Wellness Center, and that's a program of exercise, 60-minute exercise programs for both youth and adults. Right now, the Recreation Parks and Open Space is working with Norfolk Public Schools to obtain a joint use agreement for facilities. That would be an agreement where the school facilities, you're listening, right?
I'm listening.
Where the school facilities would be open for recreation uses whenever school's not in session. There have been 2 meetings so far between Daryl Crittenton and the chair of his Recreation Parks and Open Space Board and school, Mike Spencer, to put forth the parts of this agreement, and those discussions will start up again in September.
You mean an agreement is actually in?
It's actually being discussed. There's actually been meetings on it.
Yeah, I was there when they decided to do it. I was at the commissioners meeting. It was very interesting.
And then we have a few community gardens that have already been established in the city. Some of them are being used well, and some of them need some additional leadership in that area, but we have a few of them that are doing quite well. Planning is working on their general plan, which will be coming back to you some months from now, and they've talked to you about transit-oriented design, which is the linking of access to stations, higher density around stations, people being able to walk and use transit, which is usually takes some exercise in order to get to all those transportation devices. We have Public Works has made some significant changes to the Brambleton Avenue, so it's more pedestrian friendly. We have bike racks now, both in Ghent and downtown, so people can ride their bikes, and they are. And we have a new recreation parks and open space plan that was completed with the community that will be coming to the council in the fall. And run walks will be on, as you heard earlier today, will be on the health, education, and families agenda. And we have 12 predetermined routes for groups that are willing, that want to put on a walk or a race in town. They can come in with a predetermined route of different lengths. Our long-term goals are to establish a lot of partnerships. All the other cities that got into doing a Healthy Cities initiative had a lot of partnerships between different organizations in the city. And that's one of our long-term goals. We would include elements of healthy behaviors in all of our city designs and our planning efforts. We would reduce employee health risks and increase healthy behaviors among city employees, and heighten the awareness of healthy behaviors and opportunities among residents and our employees. In the short term, we would engage, this is really putting together a vision for the city and a plan for the city. We would engage stakeholders and get their role and contribution better defined, identify barriers, identify our existing assets and resources, identify programs and policies and see whether they're effective or not. A lot of the cities went through their individual policies and programs and tweaked them so that they could better address being a healthy city. Identify measures to determine our progress, develop some funding sources, and develop an implementation strategy for a healthy Norfolk community plan. Finally, our next steps is to form a collaborative group with city staff and organizations and the community and the neighborhoods. And then that group would work on looking at our available assets in the community and develop the Healthy Norfolk Community Plan. Do you have any questions?
Any questions?
Comments?
This committee could or might address the issue I brought up with food in the schools.
It could or
It
might.
could,
And in
okay.
fact, some other cities have done that, have had food as a major topic of concern.
I would hope with the collaborative group, we would use some public entities, private entities also, like the medical community. Just thinking off the top of my head, even GNC. I mean, I think there are a lot of groups that are anxious to contribute to the healthy and recreational health of our city. And so I'm hoping we wouldn't just keep this in-house. We had that nice presentation by the group
Yes.
from UVMS on obesity in children, and I mean, that's a natural adjunct that we should be working with them.
Some of the other cities have latched into programs that are in universities, for example,
Right.
in hospitals.
We don't have to recreate the ACARE. I mean, there are models of this done all over. I would hope, I understand you need to set up measures to monitor and things like that, but I would hope that would be relatively quickly formed and done, because there are so many. I mean, just those two cities alone that you mentioned, there are dozens of them that have done this. And, some great programs have done through AARP with healthy communities. That's probably the national model. So I really hope we are going to expand this on to using other resources. I'd also like to bring up once again that I'd be interested in us forming a bike commission. And apparently I was told that the city council had to offer that, to propose that, just like we proposed all of our other commissions, trees et al.
I think we should study that at the retreat, don't you?
No.
A bike.
How
All
can
right, how
one
about
be against a
motorcycle?
bike commission? That's like,
I'm not against it.
of course not, it's like
He
apple
doesn't
pie
even like
mother.
that Elizabeth River Trail. He doesn't even like that.
He does down deep, he just doesn't want to talk about it. But he would like it better than,
Would you like to work with Breck to try to come up with
I'd
what
love
ordinance
love to.
would look like?
And I still
And-
have my animal welfare one too.
Yes, I think, I agree.
We need to
Yeah.
redo that one.
Checking every
I'm-
pot.
And I'm gonna bypass the city manager's office on that one and go, sorry, Marcus.
I didn't know we could go right to Breck.
I
What a
know.
great deal. God, I can come up with a bunch of stuff. Your head is spinning.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm thoroughly impressed that you know we're really starting some serious dialogue with the school administration about public facilities, and I hope that you know that we stay the course, and that you know, I mean, when we just don't put a Band-Aid on it. You know, that we don't start with one school over here, what have you, whatever policy that you guys craft, that it pertains to the entire city. And we begin to look at, again, where our recreational facilities are in communities that have no amenities, and that we begin to fix that. I mean, because you got some communities that have a rec center and a school. You have some that have a school and no recreational facilities around them. So I hope that we would address those immediate needs in terms of making sure that those areas that have nothing there, and the school is a natural fit for those residents in that particular area, that we begin to foster those relationships sooner than later. So, thank you.
Okay, Terry, this is the bikeability thing.
Here's the
Yes.
lead into,
Which is, but I'll just comment, I went up to see my daughter in New York City this past weekend, and the kind of space they've carved, that they've found on busy New York streets for bikes is really impressive. It just tells you if you're really committed, what you can do. I mean, you take your life in your hands just walking across the streets there, but they had somehow found, carved out generous spaces for bikes.
Right.
So,
And, New York has a ride every year that they do all the way through all the boroughs, and I think they have, 40,000 people, don't they? Nikki's done it. And, what a huge driver that is economically.
Your lead-in is better than my lead-in, so.
I do think we're adding, I just said to Barclay though, we're adding all kinds of new words to our vocabulary.
Well,
I got walkability, bikeability.
I took to heart your comment when you were going over priorities that we needed to have something fun. So I created bikeability, and I immediately got grief from everyone in the 11th floor, but I don't care because I think it's a fun word.
Now, Frank, is that a picture of your bike?
No.
It's a girl's bike. Actually, I think that's your bike.
That's the windshield, the Wizard of Oz.
But it is a bike.
This bike, come on.
It's a nice beach.
And what I wanted to do is
All
try
right,
to
what's wrong
recognize.
with that picture right there?
No help.
Where are their helmets?
Once again, it might be your armor bike.
They're old enough where they're not required by city ordinance to have a helmet on.
So basically you're saying they're old enough now that we don't care if they are,
That's the ordinance that doesn't care.
Bring
Get to this point.
is this your new helmet form plan?
The whole point of this, though, with this, is that bicycling does relate directly to healthy communities, to the issues that Ann was talking to you about. Because cycling is one way that we can help improve the health of our citizens. There is evidence that riding bicycles, whether for recreation or for transportation, reduces rates of diabetes, obesity, and hypertension. So there is a clear health relationship to cycling. And unfortunately, the official policy of the city of Norfolk is contained in our current general plan, says bicycles are not and never will be a major component of Norfolk's transportation system.
Never will.
And we think it's time to change that.
Who's on the council?
So what I'm here in 92.
You're editorializing, right? You said until 2011.
Times have changed. And if you look, we have done some progressive things in the past. In 1981, we adopted a bicycle plan. The only problem we've got is it doesn't reflect the bike routes we currently have. The very best bike route in this city The one you were talking about earlier, the Elizabeth River Trail, doesn't show up anywhere in the city's adopted bike path plan. So that suggests it's time that we update this. We've developed some components of a bicycle system. So if you look at the red lines on this graphic, show where we have developed bike trails. And we need to continue to do that. But the other things we need to deal with is updating the city code. Right now, the city code prohibits all cycling in any commercial, on sidewalks in any commercial district. And it says if you're over the age of 15, you can't ride a bicycle on a sidewalk. And we think that discourages bicycling in many areas of our city where we could encourage more to get the improvements to happen.
Wait, Frank, go back. I mean, should we let people ride bikes on sidewalks in our districts? In your opinion?
I personally am not offended by allowing bikes on sidewalks in business districts. If you see in Ghent, you see people riding bikes on the
Don't you want
sidewalk.
them out in the streets? I mean, don't you want to carve spaces in the streets? I mean, even
If we can have enough room in the street, yes, we should encourage that where we've got enough right
the
of
point
way.
I was making, if there's a will, there's a way.
Absolutely.
Okay, but in New York City, they found there were bike paths, and anyway, I just think it's dangerous to get bicyclists up there on sidewalks with pedestrians.
And then one of my other personal frustrations is that within our zoning ordinance, we make absolutely no provisions for bicycles. And I compare that to the ordinance of the city where I came from, Durham, North Carolina, where we wrote in our zoning ordinance, we created a new unified development code, and we required bicycle parking. And we specified the location of bicycle parking as a way to encourage more people's opportunity to use a bicycle. We do need to acknowledge, as Ann did, that we have done some things, we're already doing some things that are conducive to bicycling. Daryl Crittenden made sure that in the RPOS master plan, recreational cycling is considered as one of the components. And in the light rail and the tide, there are docking stations for bicycles in the cars. So we're doing some things right to encourage more cycling. What we think we need to do is reevaluate the city code provisions prohibiting all cycling on sidewalks. One of the other things that you told us to do in the general plan, and this was one of the issues the Planning Commission recommended, is we needed to not just deal with cars in the general plan and but we need to deal with providing transportation choices. And one of those choices clearly needs to be bicycles.
Frank, what about skateboards and guiding people on roller skates and stuff? Do you distinguish?
Segways.
I would just draw a distinction between a skateboard and a cyclist. I think has greater control over where they're going. But ironically, right now, you could use a skateboard on a sidewalk unless it's posted for no skateboards. We also need to revise the zoning ordinance to deal with provision of bicycle facilities. We are already incorporating requirements for bicycles in the TOD provisions that you've adopted. That's done. We need to update our parking revisions, our parking ordinance standards, in order to make provisions for bicycle parking so that people have a place to put a bicycle if they ride it. And I told you when I did the presentation on a dynamic city, creative city, that the creative class doesn't wait for us. The creative class isn't waiting for us on bicycles either. They're already working on programs for things like a bike share, where people pay money in and join an association and they have the access to bicycles. This is an example of a bike share program that currently exists. I think this is out of DC. And then bike rentals, another thing that many cities are doing. We've got people who are looking at the feasibility of bike rental systems. We need to encourage this. And again, the creative class doesn't wait for us. DNC has done the series of art bike racks downtown. We've got private sector individuals. This is not a city installed bike rack. That's private sector. They're being used. And so we do need to recognize we need to get to be part of this effort. And we have begun to do that in some cities. We've got bike racks in Ocean View. We've got bike racks in Ghent.
Thank you for mentioning Ocean View. I appreciate that.
I just took where we've done bike racks, and we need to do more of this throughout the city. because people want to ride their bikes. It's our opportunity to promote that healthy city in a way that land use and zoning can play a part of by making these provisions.
Okay, any questions?
Yeah, so when are you gonna create some pedestrian bike paths in the street? Because in some communities, there's nowhere to ride a bike.
In some cases, there are none. We are working with Daryl on the recreational cycling, the bike path plan. We are looking at updating the bike path plan right now as part of the general plan so that we can have that information, and we'll be working with Public Works to try to get the implementation.
You want people to ride bikes, but you gotta create the lanes for them.
We've got to create the opportunities. I agree with you completely.
Right now, there's nowhere to ride but on the sidewalk. Or ride regular traffic like your car or something.
And for an experienced cyclist, it's less of a problem to ride with traffic. But for the inexperienced cyclist, that's a problem, and that's why I think we do need to be able to allow cyclists on the sidewalks, because that may be the only opportunity some people have where they feel comfortable. Until we are able to develop a better system.
I look at Richmond, a city like Richmond, and they was able to, you know, Monument Avenue was pretty tight, but they were able to create bike paths, you know, on some streets that are pretty narrow like ours. In some instances, they took the streets and made them one way. I don't think we'll be that drastic with it, but I just think that in order to do that, you got to have, if you want people to be able to truly utilize their bikes and ride to work or whatever, you need bike paths. I mean, other than the park, you know.
Here comes Daryl. He's making his way towards the front. Okay.
Just last week, John Kiefer and I met, and they have a series of road paving projects. We're going through that whole list to identify projects now that are currently being paved to see if we can implement sharrows or either bike lanes. So that is in the works.
What do you guys have in the works for neighborhoods that don't have sidewalks?
I'd have to ask Public Works about that.
Because we have several of those that don't have sidewalks. And that puts our bikers in the street.
That forces the biker into the street because there simply is no other alternative.
Yes, legal, but it's not safe.
So what Terry was saying with the bike commission, that would be a great group to give guidance as we continue growing. But
Do you know what, this, I mean,
we already got probably
we already
20
have a
people.
bike commission.
They're already there, and they would. It's a way of getting the creative class more involved, and I think it shows if our commissions start transitioning to things like bike commissions or animal welfare or birds, bunnies, and bees. I don't know, but it shows that our city is transitioning into what Frank's been pushing as well.
And you're going to be so disappointed in birds, bunnies, and bees.
Birds, bunnies, bees, and bicycles.
Bicycles, that's right. Busking. Don't forget busking.
Busking, yeah.
We haven't seen any coastal.
The fall, we're gonna move to the seas.
Cars.
If you're ready, Mr. Mayor, I'm going to go into another issue that you set me up for earlier today. During the Finance and Economic Development Committee meeting, you were talking to me about revising our parking regulations. I'm going to try to go through this quickly to try to finish it. A little over a year ago, City Council, specifically Vice Mayor Burfoot, asked why we applied suburban standards in our parking, and couldn't we find urban standards? And so we've done that, and what we want to do is present to you what we've got out of some of the urban standards that we have developed. We've also looked at some of the provisions proposed by Rail Volition in order to look at getting feedback before we can actually begin doing ordinance changes. Our current ordinance provisions for parking were developed in the 1980s. They are suburban standards developed by the Institute of Transportation Engineers. Planning professionals began to realize about 10 years ago these standards don't work in cities. And we began to recognize it in this city because over the past 7 years, every single plan that we have done, every neighborhood plan that we have done, has said we need to reevaluate our parking requirements because they don't work in these neighborhoods. And if you begin looking at all the zoning applications that have come through that have sought to change parking requirements, that have come through as a special district solely because they can't meet or don't want to meet our suburban parking standards, it does suggest that the parking provisions are broken. And so what we did is we looked at the new ITE standards that were developed in 2004 that do include urban standards for the first time only. We also looked at the recommendations of the National Parking Association, the American Planning Association, and a number of universities that have done research. Following the guiding principle developed that came out of Penn State, the responsible design of parking must consider the conditions and context of the community in which it's located, and how we can best meet those needs while minimizing environmental impacts. So that's what our basis was. And as we began doing this, we began to recognize that new standards could enhance development opportunities because they could increase the potential for redevelopment of some sites, looking particularly at the area downtown north of Brambleton, where there is no opportunity right now because of our parking standards. Adoption of this could help that area. We've got inconsistencies in our regulations as we begin looking at them, so we can address that. We recognize the importance of various transportation modes like bicycles as part of an overall parking system. And one of the other things we've got as a real frustration is too many of our parking requirements that we have adopted in the ordinance right now are based on things it's impossible to measure. The number of employees in a building. We have no way of knowing what that is. So we're thinking we need to get more objective measurements. Back to what the manager keeps saying is we need to be a data-driven organization. We need to base our regulations on real data. And most importantly, improving our parking standards could reduce the environmental impacts of seas of asphalt, providing opportunities for passive stormwater treatment and reducing the impact of reflected energy, the urban heat island effect that begins to contribute to global warming. So we can take steps to address these issues, and it'll improve the aesthetics of our community if we are no longer requiring a sea of asphalt in front of every development. So to give you a quick run through, the ITE recommends that a series of urban standards. They are generally between 85% and 90% of a typical suburban standard. They are reflecting the availability of bus service, proximity to sidewalks, and the presence of mixed uses. And we think we need to adopt those standards in a large portion of the city. The Planning Commission recommended that we adopt the urban standards in the area that are shown cross-hatched in red. Here it's East Beach, and then the older part of the city, essentially south of the Lafayette River. And those places we ought to apply the urban standards. In the other areas of the city, they have a more suburban character, and it's probably appropriate to keep suburban standards, generally. We already showed you the TOD provisions, and there we proposed reduced parking requirements in TOD, consistent with what Railvolution recommended. We would continue to apply those standards with these revised parking requirements, so that you would, in these areas that are shaded in yellow or golden and red, as they begin to be zoned to TOD, parking requirements would reduce. Within the downtown area south of Brambleton Avenue, we don't require any parking. Downtown north of Brambleton Avenue, we suddenly are applying suburban standards for parking. It's the issue that it prevents us from getting redevelopment in that area. So what we think we should do is change that so that we apply the TOD standards, the same TOD reduction in the entire area of Fort Norfolk, as well as the area of downtown north of Brambleton, because those areas are within walking distance of a light rail station, even though we didn't designate them as a TOD in the TOD ordinance. And we also think we ought to take a lesson from other cities where in these kind of very urban settings, off-lot parking is permitted by right, not requiring a special exception.
Frank, in Fort Norfolk right now, what are the parking requirements?
It would be the same as in a suburban location.
Sure.
Yes, sir. We have never changed the parking requirement. The only place we have changed the parking requirements is the area shown in pink.
Why would you not, why would you, you would keep that suburban when you got light rail right there?
I'm saying we shouldn't keep it suburban. We should apply an urban standard here, and then we should reduce that urban standard by the same amount that Railvolution says we should reduce the parking ratios in TOD areas. None of that is within a TOD. But it is within walking distance where it could be. And that's why we're saying we should apply those parking standards. So we're looking to try to get the kind of reduction here just as we would in a TOD.
I thought in Fort Norfolk we had URS go in there and do a complete.
It never got adopted into ordinance.
don't know how we missed that one.
Our PCOs, another place where we think our parking needs to be revised, because these are places where what we want to do is encourage a lively mix of uses and encourage pedestrian activity, encourage people to walk from one point to another. And unfortunately, our ordinances don't do that. And one of the things that we need to recognize is that over-parking, too much parking, destroys a pedestrian-oriented place. So we need to revise our parking standards, most of which are still suburban standards in our PCOs. And what we need to do is establish uniform parking standards within our PCOs. And what we're suggesting is that in our PCOs, we should be requiring 90% of the parking we would require typically in the area, depending on whether it's urban or suburban, in order to better reflect that this is a place where we expect people to park once and walk. Shared parking is another huge issue that we have. Shared parking creates an opportunity, because of multiple uses, for people to get a walk from one location to the other. And requiring every single use to meet the parking requirements of that individual use does nothing but add more asphalt. Our current regulations do that. We need to look at revising these regulations to provide for increasing reductions in parking based on the number of uses that are on the property. This is something we did in Durham while I was there, and it worked very well. So we're saying let's steal that idea and apply it here. Another thing I don't understand, I yield to Mr. Smeagol as the educator. In Norfolk, we say a fractional space. You need a tenth of a space. That counts as another full space. When I learned how to do rounding, you didn't round up unless you were at a half. But in Norfolk, we round up at 1/100th. We're saying we ought to change that and do normal rounding here so that we can reduce the amount of impervious surface. Disregard fractional spaces less than 1/2. Count them if they're 1/2 or more.
Is that by ordinance?
That's by ordinance. So I said our ordinances are written, they were state of the art from the 1980s. We have better information now, we ought to apply it. Right now we only address parking minimum, but we don't establish a parking maximum. What we ought to do is establish a parking maximum and then say if you want to go above that maximum, you've got to give us something, like using pervious pavers on that treatment or on that surface in order to reduce stormwater runoff. Now, what the Planning Commission has recommended is that if it's more than you want to do more than 125% of the minimum amount of parking, you ought to be prepared to give us some pervious pavement in order to reduce your stormwater impacts. Right now, the zoning ordinance sets the width of all parking stalls. Again, a problem, because there's no allowance for smaller cars. And ULI is now telling us that 23% of all cars that are on the road are small. They don't need a parking stall that's a typical car size. So one of the things we want to suggest is don't set the size of the stall in the ordinance, but simply allow people to use spaces consistent with the standards of the National Parking Association and permit up to 15% of the spaces to be compact spaces. So that, again, we can reduce that overall impact of paving. Bicycle parking, I already mentioned, and so what we are recommending is establishing some bicycle parking standards. So if it's a multifamily, what we're suggesting is you need to have one bicycle space for every 20 vehicle spaces that are on the site. And if you are commercial, office, or institutional, other than a church, you should have to provide a graduated rate of bicycle parking based on the number of parking spaces you'd otherwise have. Our current regulations do us no favors. They overpark because they are those suburban standards. And so what the Planning Commission has recommended is that we revise the zoning ordinance to reflect these standards, applying ITE standards where appropriate, standardizing all the requirements for PCOs, revising the provisions for shared parking, fractional spaces, and I would also throw in alternative parking programs such as valet parking, where you can stack cars that you can't do right now by ordinance. Address parking maximums. make provisions for compact spaces by allowing some flexibility in the size of spaces and require bicycle parking. And I would be remiss if I didn't acknowledge Matt Simons. Matt was an intern with us who actually did this research and has been very anxious to see this get before you.
Dr. Whitley, are we hiring Marcus?
I actually had a question that's kind of an adjunct to this. I don't think David Scott is here, is he?
No, he had
No.
But
surgery.
we had, talked about changing the parking policies in areas like Ghent and Larchmont particularly, where we're impacted by Old Dominion students, and we were supposedly working on that to have it in place before the fall semester began. Has there been any closure on that?
I do not know what the status is of those proposed revisions to the residential parking permit program. I know that Public Works was working on that because the current requirements for the percentage of residents does not work around universities, and it's not just Ghent and Old Dominion, it's also the around Norfolk State. We've got similar issues in those neighborhoods where we need to look at how we can better enhance the opportunity of those neighborhoods to deal with the impact of student parking, which right now they can't deal with.
I hope somebody could follow up on it. And then just very quickly, was anybody struck by this idea about the 125% of the minimum for as far as impervious space? I mean, do we have any kind of rule like that with Public Works on other buildings? Non-parking issues, private homes, those kinds of things?
We have a lot coverage requirement.
Yeah.
Which would be similar to this, but there we're only looking at places that have a roof over them. So the lot coverage does not affect the parking issue at all.
I just meant, I wondered if we had standards that, for instance, residential properties had to abide by so that there isn't an overabundance of impervious space.
We do, it's through the zoning ordinance. And it only there is a lot coverage requirement there. We've actually been asked by the Board of Zoning Appeals to look at modifying it because of the number of cases they're getting, trying to up it. And so we are looking at some neighborhoods where we are seeing those appeals, and frankly, we are too low. In Freemason, Ghent is fine. Those are the two neighborhoods they've asked us to look at.
We do have some green open space requirements too.
Right.
I know, I'm part of the Bay Preservation Authority. They have very strict rules when I built our house, but I didn't know about places that aren't under the Bay, because it makes a big impact on stormwater.
It will be good to address that with all these new apartments that are being proposed.
Yeah.
We'll bring that to you next week, because we have some ideas on that issue as well for you.
Frank, maybe I missed it when I was getting coffee, but I've never been so mesmerized with parking before until this presentation. It was a good presentation.
Again, thank Matt.
But I'm wondering about our own policy as a city and the city buildings, and say, for example, schools, and also requiring the same with bike racks in schools that have more than 20 spaces, or our own new buildings that we build, that the courthouse is built, that we have requirements with parking with that we adopt the policy for us as well, and trying to encourage people to get out of their cars.
We actually think this should be done by ordinance, in which case it would apply to the city as well.
Okay.
Because we think we do have an obligation. Marcus is giving me a look when I say that. We think we have an obligation to set an example.
Oh, but I really want to go back for a second. I thought as a result of the light rail that we had to proffer, that we would create this opportunity for less cars and more opportunities to use the rail.
Yes, sir.
So I could have sworn that a part of that discussion took into fact Atlantic City. I thought that was a part of when we built that out, that we couldn't, that there was a certain number of parking spaces that we could build because we couldn't dig into that formula to hurt ridership.
I think
Mr. Vice Mayor, defined in the agreement we had with the FTA, that was defined as a specific area of the downtown central business district. That particular thing did not apply to the outlying areas along the route.
That agreement only covered
But the principle is correct.
the areas shown in pink on that graphic. But the principle is that we completely agree with you. We need to look at revising the standards to require less parking because that will help encourage people to use the light rail system.
So do we have bike racks at City Hall?
Yes.
We do, we have a small one, between
One?
here and the
Never been all the
courthouse.
parking garage.
But then
But that was through the Elizabeth River Trail.
it's always proved to be more than adequate.
I don't know, maybe the city needs incentive to encourage employees to ride their bikes, other than health reasons.
What I've never seen though is a parking space for a bicycle, that's a new concept.
It's a bike rack.
So that when you're saying you'll require a bike rack, that you're not increasing the paved area.
No. You are requiring bike racks, and the number of bikes that have to be attached is what you're referring to is a bike parking space.
You made it today, Mr. Mayor.
I'm so impressed.
The whole agenda, the first one was at 7 o'clock. You made it all the way through the agenda. 7?
You know, the problem is, all of the statistics show that more people are driving cars every year than the year before almost. What we learned at the planning district was that like 10 years ago, 73% of people were driving alone to work. And in 10 years, it's now 82%. So all the numbers are.
Are you talking Hampton Roads now?
Yeah, I'm talking across Hampton Roads.
Right.
It's so more, so you have to come at it in a cultural thing. It's not just, you gotta get people out of their cars and you gotta make it worthwhile. But 82% and every year it's going up more, and lots of those people are driving alone. And I'm sorry, 82% of these people are driving alone.
Yeah.
But all of the numbers are say more people are driving more miles.
You
And
go
the planning
up-
district has all of that stuff. Half of our workforce commutes into the city every day. It's like 111, 112,000 jobs, and most of them drive their own cars and drive by themselves.
Because our transit,
Transit's gonna try to,
it's not attractive.
that's right. But that's where that's one of our biggest problems, I think, is how you make it, how do you make the city more accessible by the workforce that wants to come here. Okay, why don't we'll call it an evening and we'll go upstairs and do what we do. Some of them drive red sports cars by themselves.